everyone. Welcome to another episode of Content Supply Live. Today we're going to be talking a lot about podcasting. Our first topic is Netflix and how it's setting its sights on podcasts. The second one is the easiest way to film a multicam podcast using the new Mevo Go software, which is really cool. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll also talk about the power of short form videos for podcast growth. So our first topic is Netflix sets its sight on podcasts. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with this, but I think it was just talked about this week that Netflix is now trying to do video podcasts on their platform. I know for me, I'm not sure how to feel about this. I feel like Netflix is more for like the streaming aspect of like watching your favorite shows or movies. I'm not sure how beneficial it'll be to have video podcasts on the platform, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
I've got some thoughts on this. I love it because I think about, did you guys watch Secret Lives of Mormon Wives?
Yes.
Okay, so did you watch the Vial Files podcast after as well?
Yes.
The production value of that particular podcast is very high, in my opinion. So when you have the production value that can match that level of what Netflix is bringing, I think it's totally fine as a format because it's just entertainment, right? It's an entertainment platform first and foremost. So in my opinion, I think it's great to use that as a leverage point. It also expands the potential for podcast networks to get their stuff in front of a paywall, which means it's going to be easier to monetize. So if you have a podcast that can get on Netflix, you actually get paid every time your stuff gets streamed, even more so. And then maybe they might purchase more podcasts. It just opens up the potential for podcasters to have a monetization method, where we've seen that with some clients that if they have a podcast, sometimes it can be a grind to get someone to pay it unless you got the huge amounts of sponsorships behind it. That's the benefit to Netflix. And when you get a show on Netflix is they have monthly subscribers every single month. There's cash and revenue going in behind that paywall, therefore giving your content guaranteed pay. I don't know if that's how they're going to structure the deals with podcast studios, if that's how they're going to structure deals long term. I hope that's how it would work. Spotify doesn't do that for their creators, but hopefully Netflix will, right, is the thing. But I think for the format and for the potential of what podcasting can be, I think it's a great next step of what these people who have amassed huge audiences to give them that potential next step to reach those people.
Yeah, my brain kind of went there too. I was like, I wonder what this is going to mean for monetization of podcasts, if it's going to be a lot easier. I'm also wondering, I know in the past, there have been several like big podcasts that have made deals with Spotify, like Joe Rogan and Alex Cooper's podcast that I'm curious to see if something big happens like that with Netflix to where they're paid some crazy amount of money to have their podcast only broadcasted on Netflix. I'll be curious to see what happens there.
Yeah, that was my initial thought too, because, with like Call Her Daddy or like the Joe Rogan podcast, like, of course they're on like YouTube, they're on Spotify, but like they're on multiple platforms. So it'd be interesting to see if these podcasts that Netflix brings on to their platform are like Netflix only. They're only going to be streamed on Netflix. I think that would be really beneficial for them because that would mean more subscriptions and more monthly subscriptions for Netflix. And I mean, I feel like Netflix isn't as cheap as it once was. I think it was like $7 at one point, but now it's like, I don't know, like $15 a month. I'm not exactly sure how much it is,
yeah,
but
they keep bumping it too. I think they just broke all their profit records and they're going to bump the price again. Gotta love shareholders, right?
They kicked me off of my parents' Netflix, and I'm a little bit salty about that. I feel like this whole summer, I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like they're really cracking down on households.
Well, we have the plan with the ads, and it's worth it. It is the best entertainment. I will not lie. We've tried the other platforms. I tried to do my little protest. I just buck up and pay it now. But anyway, it's besides the point.
And look at you saving $5 a month watching those ads. Good for you, Brendan.
Well, when you say it like that, I feel really stupid.
Yeah.
So, but it gives me inspiration for what I do for a day job. So I don't know.
True.
It's still, it's market research. Maybe I can write it off as maybe I can write that off as a tax break because it's market research.
I bet you could.
Yeah, you probably could.
I don't take that as legal advice. No one listen to this and think that that's actually a workaround, but I might try it. I'll talk to my CPA about it.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know what your CPA says, because if so, then I have a few subscriptions that I can write off too.
Just like, hey, I'm studying the ads because of that. Honestly, like, you can make anything an excuse to write it off sometimes, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, yeah, I'll be interested to see how Netflix does the podcasting. We'll see how that goes. Okay, our second topic is the easiest way to film a multicam podcast with Mevo Go. So I know that Brennan knows a little bit about this, so I'm interested to see what he says.
This leads Abbott sees solid content creators. Visuals are really great. What I saw, back this up. What inspired looking into this was we had a client that is designing a very high-end studio, and the way that our lead production guy, Jared, he was telling me, okay, this is the way you record multiple cameras at once. And I was like, I feel like there's got to be a way that people record podcasts, have multiple cameras, and they don't have to just throw SD cards every time they do it. Like, I know there's a way this happens. It doesn't have to be a huge production house. Like, someone has to have software like this. So we found two options. One of them is going to be a YouTube video about OBS that we're going to drop here soon. And then this was the other one that I saw that was really cool, that you just need an iPad and phones. And I think this is probably the most likely use case for people that are doing a podcast. So let me see if I can showcase what their setup is going to look like. So he goes through, and in this video, he shows how multiple phones can be connected to this thing wirelessly with this particular software and these hookups. And I don't even know how the ins and outs of it. I know this is a whole setup you guys can look at, but the footprint of this production space is so small that it makes it ridiculously easy to use. And you're just straight iPhones in a studio space, and it looks great, right? So you're able to control your switcher here on an iPad. It has all the ins and the outs. It's pretty nuts. And you don't need all the bells and whistles. So you hook in your mics, which probably are coming to like a Rodecaster or something. I got to see what other setup. But when he is talking through it, like, they have the three multiple angles, and this is the results shooting on iPhones. And it's better than some of the stuff people put together, and it levels up things. But obviously you can tell it's iPhone. I can. It's a little flatter. It doesn't have the depth of field that a good lens would. The sensor on an iPhone is amazing, but still just not quite as good as higher end camera. But for a get by, pretty awesome here. So I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on this? All you need is these couple of mics and iPhones, an iPad, and you can have a pretty high end video podcast. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I really like it. I think it's really beneficial, especially from like the cost effectiveness of this compared to like hiring an entire production team or camera crew to come and shoot your podcast, especially if, I mean, you're only shooting like a 45-minute podcast like once a week. You don't want to have to hire like a whole production crew to come to your house and set up all the lighting and everything like that to create your podcast. So I don't know, Brendan, do you know how much this costs? Is it like a subscription plan? Or
let me look at this. So obviously he's like, this is a free trial. I believe this is, so the audio interface he uses with an affiliate link is a couple, like $120. And then the mics he's using are $300 a piece. And that's arbitrary because you can really kind of make whatever mics work. Is this a USB? No, it's an XLR. Okay, so if you just had a couple XLR mics, condenser mics, you can get away with those for, a couple $100. Your audio interface being 120. I mean, you're $300-$400, and then if you already have your iPhone and your other friends' iPhones, that's what he said is he's using his phone, and then the other people on the podcast were sharing their phones as well. But if you had to buy those from scratch, you could probably get brand new iPhones you're using as just for this for, about $1,000 to $1,200 a piece, which is still half as much as a regular camera for this level. And you don't have to have all the extra bells and whistles and the extra lens, because a good lens, a good camera body, you're going to be at $2,500. So you're half the cost on each thing there. So you probably get in and out about $3,000 to $4,000 on this whole setup. Really nice. Set up once, footprint super small because your little tripods are teeny. They're this much space on the floor and they're a monopod. So like in a setup in an office, it'd be super easy. Just have all these iPhones sitting on monopods in the corner, bring them out, power up the iPad and get ready to rock. It's super laid back, super easy.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I think it'll be really beneficial for especially like our clients.
Yeah.
Because they can just set that up anytime they have time, and they don't have to like schedule a specific time out of their busy days already to do it. They can just, I get home at 5 o'clock, I'm going to set it up and I'm going to record by 6. Super easy.
And they turn themselves into a production crew really simply. So maybe we'll put together a bundle eventually here that people can make that really simple to work with, show them how to set it up. So something to look forward to.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So our last topic is the power of short form videos for podcast growth. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I know, for example, like me, I don't normally listen to like the Call Her Daddy podcast, but whenever I see the short form videos of like Alex Cooper and one of her guests, like whether it's like, I know that Rachel Kirkconnell was on a couple weeks ago. Anyways, there's just a lot of guests that she has on that I tune in specifically for that guest, not necessarily like for all of her other podcast episodes. But that's just one example. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I feel like I've discovered quite a few podcasts through Instagram Shorts by Instagram Reels and short form content. So yeah, I think it's a really, really effective way of getting your podcast in front of other people, because really there is no other way to market your podcast. I think it's very rare that you find podcasts just like organically through the search, because all you can really tell about it before you like commit to listening to an hour is like the art on it and like the cover art and like the podcast title. And unless you've seen them in like a collaboration with another podcast, it's really hard to get a feel for what the podcast is actually about. So I think it's definitely a super important part of podcast marketing, because makes it super easy.
Yeah, shorts are good. They're still relevant. People still use them. I think it comes back to, what are people consuming and how are people consuming that content? And a lot of people are repurposing into shorts, but it's pretty awesome. I mean, you got the types of things that work best. When I think about like your hooks and your best moments of podcasts, your stingers, basically whatever you would throw at the front of the podcast that's like the best moments, that's what you should make your shorts from. Because if it's a hot take, if it's something that blows people away, that's how you're going to attract people out of a cold listener to come and actually check out what you're doing. If you're not talking about something very captivating, obviously that's something to consider, because maybe you don't necessarily need all your listeners to be hyper interested in that. But if you're giving a lot of value and you're cutting those pieces, then long-term strategy is going to be good. And I don't know if you wanted to focus on like how to turn those pieces into engagement, Justine, but like what elements did you want to necessarily focus on there as well?
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about that as well. I know that you mentioned like hooks are really good. Because I mean, if you're scrolling on TikTok or Instagram Reels and you stumble upon a podcast that's not very engaging, then obviously you're not going to tune in to that podcast. And like Kate said, it's not very often that you stumble upon like a long form YouTube video of a podcast itself. Like it's not very often that you stumble along a podcast just like organically, if that makes sense. Right. So I think that these shorts are definitely beneficial. And I know that they help me find a lot of podcasts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Saying something really viral worthy is the biggest thing when you're seeing those. Because when you look at people who scroll through YouTube, what are people on YouTube even there for? Like, I want to learn this thing. I want to do this thing. It's like another search engine. Like, how often are they saying, I want to listen to a podcast about this? They're going to look on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or go somewhere else for that. They're not going to go to YouTube. So shorts are the only way you're going to reach people on YouTube if they're a cold listener. And then you have your other platforms. Sometimes people are looking around. But the thing with podcasting is you're building a community and you're building a group of people that like want to hear what you have to say on a regular basis. And so that's it. It comes back to how are you engaging them when you're doing these more viral pieces. So it's super important still. It's definitely crowded. It's definitely flooded, but people still need to make them. Still need to make shorts because people are still consuming it.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right. Does anyone else have anything to discuss, like podcast related? Because I feel like that's the theme for today. How to record podcasts, how to use the short forms. All right. Well, this was today's episode of Content Supply Live. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to subscribe to our channel to hear more from us shortly. All right. Well, we will see you next time. Bye.